Hey everybody, what is up? In this video, I'm going to talk about teaching small children about executive functions and ways that they can support and help themselves. So my name is Seth Perler. I'm an executive function coach. I wear a lot of hats in the executive function world. But what I do really is I help struggling students navigate this thing called education so that they can have a great life. And in this vlog, this is in response to an email that I received from a parent here named Jen. So basically, again, Jen says it's about teaching small children. I get a lot of questions from people about a few things. One is, how do we teach executive functions to younger kids? Because I tend to work with middle, high school, and college. And two, what about young adults or adults? So I get a lot of parents saying, hey, I'm learning about your stuff and I'm realizing that this is me. How do I adapt this to my life? Or I get teachers who say, hey, I'm a teacher and I struggle with this stuff. How do I do it? But I also get a lot about younger kids, a lot of questions about this. So I'm going to address this today. I'll show you the letter that she sent and tell you my responses. So this is from somebody named Jen. Basically, she says, I've been a fan of your stuff, but most of it is for older kids. This is true. I'm an adult with at least ADHD, and I have a son on the spectrum and also has ADHD. I have a younger son, and and I suspect he has the same genes as the rest of the family, LOL. I'm also a special education teacher for kindergarten age. And I think executive functions are a challenge to teach younger kids because there aren't a ton of resources directed for small children. That's true and it's not true. There are a lot of resources that help small children build executive functions that are just not called executive function resources. So I'm certain, Jen, that a lot of what you are doing is teaching it, albeit it may be indirectly, it is doing it. But you go on to ask about direct, and I'll mention that in a minute. So you said, I wanted to write and ask if you know of any resources or programs for teaching small children about executive functions and the ways that they can support and help themselves. I don't know of a lot of programs out there. There may be them, I'm just not versed in it. But I like how you framed the question at the end here, where you said how they can support and help themselves. Because that's really what we're trying to do. What I'm trying to do with middle, high school, and college kids is to help them to build independence. I want them. I don't want to be coaching them. I don't want the parents to be coaching them. They don't want anybody to be coaching them eventually. They want independence. What we want is we want to help a student be able to get to a point where they say, I can coach myself. I realize that I need a plan right now and I have skills to build a plan that's going to work in this situation. I realize I need to organize in order to accomplish this goal, and these are methods that I have. So we want them to have the independence to say, wow, I have a toolbox, I have tools, I know how to use them, I know when to use them, and I actually use them. So that's really the goal of my coaching, or of anybody trying to help these kids, is to help them build that independence. So let's get back to the letter here. So let's see. Where were we here? Okay. I know at this age, preschool through elementary, it is mostly the adult's job to set up the structure and to provide the routines. Now, when the adult sets up the structure, one of the executive functions is called organization. Part of what the prefrontal cortex of the brain, where executive function happens, the brain helps us to execute, to get important things done. In order to get any important thing done, we have to be able to organize certain things. Organize our thoughts. If we're writing a paper, organize our paper, organize our backpacks, organize all sorts of things. So when you say the teacher setting up the structure, that's organization. And when you say to provide the routines, that's actually planning. In my mind, I think of the adult setting up the routines as making plans. And that's part of executive function. So these are two executive functions that you are doing, right? That the adult is doing at this age. Sure, I agree. I would agree with you at that. And I'll address that in a moment. I'm looking for a way to, I love that you asked to directly, because I said we often indirectly teach it, to directly teach small children about the executive functions and how they can help themselves become more independent. I know it's a stretch and some resources might just be an introduction, which I also think is okay. Okay. So I say yes, that's a great question. What we are doing here is we are looking at how to help kids build skills. These are executive function skills. The brain is building skills. So the earlier we start, and I get this question all the time too, when should I start? The earlier we start intervening and helping them consciously, directly, as you say, to consciously and directly use these tools, to be aware that they're using them, not just teach them indirectly, but really know and teach the kids that they are building skills. They don't, some kids with strong executive function, they really pick up the skill and they don't need the direct. They're watching, they really learn how to organize and plan and manage time and do all of these different 13 executive functions that I talk about. But the ones who struggle with it, it just doesn't come naturally. So we're building these skills, and that's what you're asking is, how do we help younger kids build these skills? So it's the same way that we would teach a middle school or a high school or a college kid or an adult how to build the skills. What you say is we use a lot of direct instruction, but I'm going to give you a few concrete ideas that will help you here. All right. Concrete idea, let me screen share right here again. Concrete idea number one. You talk about them supporting and helping themselves. Okay, that's about agency. So we want to give kids agency. Agency means it's like independence, right? So an example would be to ask leading questions instead of answering their questions. So when a kiddo says, hey, where's the such and such supplies? I want to do some art. Let's say you're working with your kindergartners. You might, instead of saying, oh, it's right over there, to help them build agency, instead of answering the question directly. And do not mistake me. If you're not familiar with my work, I'm not saying ever to do anything like this in a contemptuous or condescending tone, ever. That is not what we're doing here. We're trying to build agency, confidence, connection. But to say, yeah, where are those supplies? Where do you think would be a good place for us to store those supplies? And oftentimes what you'll find is that the kid will say, oh yeah, they're over there. That's agency. They just answered their own question, and you help them to learn to ask the question by you just asking the question. So there's so many contexts that we can do that, but really it's the point is to ask leading questions instead of just giving them the answer. And of course there's a time and a place, and sometimes you're in a hurry and whatever. But the point is, when can we help them come up with their own answer? That helps with agency. And then the next thing that I say here is reward the answer. So when I work with kids, I'll often say, I like your thinking. So I'm not using the example of like, where is the art supplies? But like, let's say that they ask me something and I say, it could be, how do you write a paper? How do I start this paper? How do I, use this planner when I hate planners? Whatever the question is. What do you think? What do you think? That's one that I got from George Betts. I studied under George Betts, fantastic guy. But I love that. What do you think? And the kid says X, Y, or Z. Now, here's the important thing. It doesn't matter if the answer is right or not. It doesn't matter. Asking, what do you think? And they say something and saying, wow, I like your thinking. So it can be off base, but you can say, wow, I like your thinking. That's very creative. That's really a great way to look at it. Tell me more about that. So anyhow, the point is, again, agency, not answering it for them. Number two, ownership. Ask for ownership. So basically, asking them something like, where is a good place that we should store it? How, let's say you're teaching young kids executive functions, how to organize. You ask them, you ask the whole class, how should we organize the art area? How should we organize this area? How should we organize the room? You ask them what they think, and you get their ownership. They're helping design. So when you said usually the adults will create the structure, well, guess what? Maybe you know how the classroom will function best, and you know how it'll function best with your style. But you can start with the classroom out of order in certain ways as opportunities to help allow them to be a part of designing it, even though you know where you want to lead them. So that's something that I use as a teacher. Every year I would make rules or guidelines with the classroom. I'd ask them, what do you, not just top down, hey, this is what our class rules are, but what do you guys think? So get ownership. Plan as a class, and then you can also plan with the individual and help them creatively come up with ideas to organize things, to plan things. Okay. The next thing I want to mention is when we're teaching young kids executive function is the emotional regulation. And so this is so complex, but basically us consciously teaching them how to regulate emotion. So one of my favorites is, I notice you look frustrated. I notice your voice got very loud when you were speaking with that child. I notice you look angry. I notice you look upset. I notice you look happy. I notice you look calm. So to reflect back and then asking them what, and this is a really good one for kids who are learning emotional regulation, when another child is going through something, to say, what did you notice about when that child was going through that, so that they can articulate what they saw and they can really start to connect dots with emotional regulation, not only in themselves but obviously in other people. And then the question, how, like maybe they say, oh, I noticed that that kid was unhappy. You said, how do you know? And then they can say, well, they were crying, or well, this was happening. So you can really, one of my favorite things is using very non-judgmental words like I notice to help them. Finally, next, direct instruction. Yes, you're right. We should directly instruct. Like you can teach young kids, you can show them brain models, brain pictures, draw the brain, drawings of the brain. You can directly teach about what's going on in the brain with executive function, and just start small. And then finally, my final thing for you here, and I'll wrap this up, is visual, visual, visual. So you're asking, how can they help themselves? How can we teach small children about executive function so that they can support and help themselves, that agency? Well, visual, visual, visual. Anytime you can do visual routines. And you know what? Kindergarten teachers do this great. A lot of time kindergarten teachers will plan the day with the class visually in front of the room, and they plan the day together. And those visual options, maximize those as much as possible for every single routine you can possibly think of. The more you can create, and with the ownership and buy-in of the class optimally, but the more you can create those sorts of visual cues. And this also goes for middle, high school, college, and young adults and adults. Like, we do visual cues ourselves all the time. I know I do in my house. Visual, how can we make it visual? And get their ownership and buy-in so that they're learning to create visual cues for themselves as well. Anyhow, my name is Seth Perler, SethPerler.com. Got a ton of free resources and stuff for you teachers, parents, therapists. Again, that's SethPerler.com. If you like this video and you want to support me, give it a thumbs up, like it, leave a comment below. I am curious, what do you think? How can we teach younger kids executive function? Did you get any ideas while you're watching this video? Go ahead and help all of us and share that below. And that also helps me grow my channel with the algorithm, the magic algorithm that I'm a bit cynical about. But I really appreciate you. I want to wish you, parents, teachers, therapists, whoever's watching this, I want to wish you happiness, joy, connection with the people you love, peace of mind today. Have a fantastic day. If you like my work, please share it with other people. Take care. I'll see you soon.